flying down from Key West to Dry Tortugas National Park. Dry Tortugas National Park, I believe, is one of the most beautiful parks we have. And it's one of the least visited parks. It's actually one of the largest parks in that it's 100 square miles in area, and that area is made primarily up of coral reef, shallow sandy areas, small islands. The area was actually discovered in 1513 by Juan Ponce de Leon, and he had named the area initially Tortuga, which stood for turtles. He added dry to the word because there was no fresh water in the location, so ultimately, hence, later on it became known as the Dry Tortugas by the Spaniards. Now, the Dry Tortugas itself earns itself into American history because during the Civil War, the Navy decided to build a military fortress on the site, and that fort became Fort Jefferson. They began construction on that in 1846, and it is the largest masonry structure in the Western Hemisphere now. They brought bricks from way up in the Northeast to other sections of the United States by ship to build the fort itself. And the construction of the fort, actually, when they finished it, they had 25-ton Rodman cannons which were stationed along the top of the fort. Now, the irony of the whole deal is that Northerners wanted to provide a fort that would attempt to block any southern migration around the tip of Florida, either transportation of goods from South Carolina, or up around the Mississippi River area. That was a primary transport area, and they figured that building a fort there, they could block it. Now, the fort also was used by the Northern Army in those days as a prisoner of war fort also, so there were prisoners of the Civil War that were kept on that location. Now, around the exterior of the fort itself, they actually had a moat. And many years ago, that moat, it's actually filled in with sand as a result of several hurricanes that have struck Key West since 1950. But in the old days, the moat went all the way around the fort, and it was dug out, and the water was fairly deep there. And there were a fair amount of fish and lobster you could see in that moat. That was a pretty cool event. Here's some video shot of the center of the fort. You'll see the trees out there. This was the parade area, the area where the troops would stay in their tents, and the interior protected by the fort walls. At one point, there were about 2,000 people on the island, including the troops, the officers, and their families. Now, as far as fishing and diving around the fort, they're inside of 1 mile of the fort itself. It is open to fishing, and then there is a protected zone that extends from there out in all directions from the fort. In that protected zone, there's no diving, no harvesting, no fishing, no spear fishing. So we're standing at the front of the cell of one of the most famous parts of the whole fort for a lot of reasons, but this is the location where Dr. Mudd was housed. Dr. Mudd, you may remember, when Lincoln was assassinated, his assassiner was a gentleman by the name of Mr. John Wilkes Booth, who everyone remembers from history. And when he fled that night from the Opera House, he jumped on a horse and he took off across the countryside. And he knew he would be pursued, and he was pursued. And he came across, he had been injured when he jumped off the balcony, and he came across a physician. And the physician was Dr. Mudd. And the belief is, throughout history, is that the physician was in fact a Southern sympathizer and took care of Wilkes simply because of his allegiance or supposed allegiance to the South. After history has shown, actually, though, that there's a lot of questions about that, whether or not Dr. Mudd really was a Southern sympathizer or whether Dr. Mudd simply was exercising his obligations under his Hippocratic Oath to take care of a patient. And he took care of that patient, and he later suffered the consequences. A lot of interesting history about that. The answer is unclear. I think it was probably one of those situations, a lot like we see today, where the country was in a fever pitch. The president had been assassinated. They were looking for someone to hold responsible. And one of the people they held responsible was Dr. Mudd, and he was housed here in the facility at Dry Tortugas. So it's a very famous part of the facility. So it's really a spectacular place. You guys should all come down here and check it out. We passed the ferry boat today. You saw the ferry boat. You come to Key West, you can hop on the ferry boat and come down for the day. When you come down for the day, you'll dock here at the main dock. And then you can come in through the gangplank and come into the fort, spend the day at the fort. You can camp overnight. You can actually come down on the ferry boat and camp overnight or for a couple of nights and hop back on the ferry boat and go back to Key West. And that's really an awesome trip for some of you who want to come down here and camp out. But I think it's one of the most unusual parks in the United States. Very few people actually even know of its existence. So it's a cool place. Come check it out. One other option for you. If you're down in Key West, you don't want to take the ferry boat down. There are a couple of flights a day of float planes that land on the water right out front here, and will take you to the fort for a couple of hours to tour. That is a spectacular flight. So you should think about that also. Really cool place to come. Check it out. Wanted to show it to you guys real quick just so you see it. But the real prize is out there, 80 miles away. And we'll be taking you there tomorrow morning. Let's roll. Out in front of the structure, got a really nice camping area. It's kind of a first come, first serve. It can fill up the right times of the year, but a really nice camping facility here. Tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to hit the fort tonight. We're going to try to get some goggle eyes. We've got a really good bait spot. We usually get goggle eyes, which is an awesome bait. And we're going to work the sloughs down there in about 180 and 200 feet of water looking for the muttons tomorrow morning, first light. A lot of those muttons should be congregating in bigger groups and running down these troughs out towards the spawning area at Riley's Hump. So this is the time of year you can catch them sometime moving to that location. You can catch them in greater numbers. They get bundled up a little bit, so we're going to work on that. Also working on getting some hogfish. Got the hogfish rig set up. If you guys have never tried these, you should. They work really well for hogfish. We'll put you on that. Then we're going to anchor up, and at night we'll still work a few muttons, hopefully get some tuna into the bait lights. And then the next morning, early morning, we'll shoot out and start deep dropping. We've got a really good spot for some golden tile we're going to work and some queen snapper. You never know what we're going to get into. One awesome thing about deep dropping is you never know when it's going to turn on and when it's going to turn off. We haven't really figured out the reason why. I don't know that anyone has, but those fish seem to feed heavy and then stop feeding, and you can come back an hour later to the same spot and they'll be feeding again. I think those underwater currents pull a lot of nutrients in, and they do a lot of different things depending on tides and wind and other currents. So we're going to hit that too. So we're going to take you guys. It's going to be a pretty epic trip. We're going to do a lot of things in the next 2 days, maybe 3 days. We'll be out sleeping on the deck, showing you guys a little bit what it's like to run 170 miles out in the Gulf of America, looking for those fish and taking you guys along. So we're running. Stay with us. Let's roll. This time we're in about 1,000 feet of water looking for queen snapper and golden tile. This fishery is an interesting one. I've been fishing it for a while and I'm still trying to figure things out. I know there are some people who really know an awful lot about the area and how to catch fish. There's a lot of art to it, but I think that what's happening is the current movements on the surface and the temperature on the surface are vastly different than those found in 1,000 feet of water. And sometimes you can have currents on the surface moved by tides and winds. Currents at 1,000 feet are moving in an entirely different direction due to the Gulf Stream and other things that affect it. And in that particular area, the Gulf Stream eddies around some of those shelves that drop off into 3,000 or 4,000 feet of water and create some upwellings that move the currents in different directions. So the fish definitely are affected a lot by that. And it's difficult sometimes to catch them at certain times when the currents aren't right. You can fish an area and not get a bite. Go and fish another area, come back an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and the fish can be on fire. So it's interesting the feeding habits. Now that's true of a lot of shallow water areas too, but I find it's especially true out here when you're deep dropping in these deep areas off pulley. Another golden tile. Beautiful fish. Super cold when they come up from the bottom. No live bait needed, baby. Mutton off dry Tortugas. Right there. Yes. So we're running back. It was a good trip. It was a little too rough. The wind was blowing about 15 knots and the water was swelling pretty good. And it's hard to really maintain bottom properly when you're deep dropping in deep water when the boat with that much movement. And we never really we caught fish, but not what we were expecting to catch. And that happens sometimes when you run down there. But the trip itself is well worth it. It's just a great place to go explore. To go check out new areas and catch fish you hadn't seen.